He had everything Lagos could offer a man. A penthouse on Victoria Island with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the ocean. 3 cars in a private garage, each one worth more than most people earned in 5 years. A company with 400 employees that had made the business pages of every major Nigerian publication at least twice in the past year alone. He had everything, and he was completely, quietly, exhausted by all of it. Not by the work he loved. He had built Ade Capital from a one-room office in Surulere with a second-hand laptop and a stubbornness that had frightened even him sometimes. The company was his. Every contract, every investment, every difficult decision that had taken years to pay off. That was real. That he did not regret. What exhausted him was everything that came after the success. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments. And remember, not every person sitting in the dust is poor. And not every person sitting in a penthouse is at peace. Sit back. This one will surprise you. His name was Adebayo Okonkwo, 38 years old. The only son of a retired civil servant from Abeokuta, who had worked his entire life to give his son a university education and a clean name. His father had done both. Adebayo had done the rest. People called him Bayo. His staff called him Sir. The business press called him one of Lagos's most eligible bachelors. Women called him constantly. That last part was the problem. It had not always been this way. In his early 30s, before the company became what it was, he had dated simply. A woman named Sola who taught secondary school and made him laugh. A woman named Ngozi who was doing her master's and argued with him about everything and was right about half the time. He had been happy then without knowing he was happy. Then the money came. Not slowly, it came fast, the way Lagos money always does when it finally arrives. 1 deal, then 3, then the kind of growth that makes you look at your own bank statement twice. And the women changed. Not all of them. Not at first. But one after another, he began to notice things. The way a woman's eyes moved to his car before they moved to his face. The way certain conversations always found their way back to his company, his investments, his connections. The way some of them spoke to his driver differently from how they spoke to him. The way love was always warm when he was generous and always complicated when he was not. He was not a fool. He saw it clearly. But seeing it clearly did not make it hurt less. The last one was Tola. Tola was beautiful and sharp and funny. She had come into his life at a charity dinner, laughing at something across the room, completely unaware he was watching. He had thought, finally, here is a woman who is not performing. They dated for 8 months. He was careful at first, the way a man who has been disappointed learns to be careful. But she was patient and consistent, and he eventually let his guard down fully. Then one evening he came home early from a cancelled meeting and found her going through the files on his home office computer. Not casually, deliberately. She had his investment folders open. She had her phone out, photographing documents. She had been sent by a competitor. A man Adebayo had been in a long dispute with over a land acquisition in Lekki. Tola had been placed deliberately in his path. The charity dinner where he first saw her laughing across the room. She had known he would be there. He sat with that information for 3 days before saying anything to anyone. On the 4th day, he asked his assistant Emeka, a quiet, dependable man who had been with him for 6 years, to clear his schedule indefinitely. Not 2 weeks, not a month, just until further notice. Emeka looked at him carefully. Sir, is everything all right? Adebayo looked out his office window at the Lagos skyline. I need to think, he said. He drove home, sat in his penthouse and thought for 2 full days. What he kept coming back to was not Tola specifically. It was the pattern. The pattern of being seen as a resource rather than a person. The pattern of not knowing, truly knowing, whether someone was with him or with what he represented. And somewhere in those 2 days of thinking, the idea came to him. Came the way strange ideas do, sideways, almost as a joke at first. Then he sat with it longer and it became serious. What if he could not be seen? What if, for a period of time, he removed everything that identified him as Adebayo Okonkwo of Ade Capital, the car, the clothes, the name, the office, the money, and became nobody? What if he sat somewhere ordinary and let the world come to him as it truly was? He thought about this for another day. Then he called Emeka. I need some things, he said. Old clothes, a walking stick, dark glasses. I want them worn, not new. And I need you to find me a spot. Somewhere busy. Somewhere people pass through every day. Emeka was quiet for a moment. Sir. Yes. Another pause. How long? As long as it takes, Adebayo said. The spot Emeka found was on a pedestrian bridge near a busy junction in Surulere, not far from where Adebayo had started his company a decade ago, which felt right in a way he could not fully explain. Emeka came with the items 3 days later. Old trousers, faded. A loose shirt with a small tear at the collar. Worn slippers. Dark glasses, the kind associated with visual impairment. A simple white cane. A small cup to place on the ground. He also came with a small earpiece connected to a phone in Adebayo's pocket, so Emeka could monitor from a distance without being obvious. And he came with deep concern on his face. Sir, I have to say this clearly. I do not think this is a good idea. Adebayo was already changing in the back of the car. I know you don't. You are one of the most recognizable businessmen in Lagos. Someone will see you. I will look different. People do not look at beggars, Emeka. That is the whole point. Emeka pressed his lips together in the way he did when he disagreed but had already decided not to argue further. If anything happens, Adebayo said, I have the earpiece. You will be in the car on the street below. If anything feels wrong, I will signal. Emeka looked at him one last time. Your father would not like this, sir. Adebayo smiled. My father would understand it completely. The first day was strange. He sat on the pedestrian bridge with his cane across his knees and his cup on the ground and his dark glasses hiding his eyes. He kept his head slightly bowed the way he had observed blind people position themselves. He said nothing. He did not ask for money. He simply sat. Lagos moved around him like water around a stone. People walked past in their dozens. Office workers, market women, students, Danfo conductors shouting destinations. A man selling recharge cards weaving between commuters. Children in school uniforms running where they should have been walking. Nobody stopped. Not once in 4 hours did anyone stop to speak to him. A few people dropped coins without looking at him. One man dropped a note and walked on with his phone pressed to his ear. One woman looked at him for a moment with an expression that mixed pity and discomfort and then looked away and kept moving. He sat with this. By the end of the first day, as Emeka drove him home in silence, Adebayo understood something he had known intellectually but never felt in his body. Invisibility was not freedom. Invisibility was a particular kind of loneliness. He went back the second day. And the third. On the fourth day he began to notice the rhythms of the bridge. Who passed at what time? The woman who sold groundnuts at the bottom of the stairs and started every morning by praying quietly before the first customer arrived. The security guard from a nearby bank who bought from her every day and always said thank you. The young man in a food delivery uniform who stopped to rest on the railing every afternoon around 2 o'clock, clearly exhausted, scrolling through his phone with the look of someone who needed a moment of peace. He noticed who saw him and who did not. He noticed that the people who were most likely to acknowledge his presence were the people who looked least like they had extra to give. A woman with a baby on her back and a load on her head still found a moment to glance at him and say God bless you. Not as a transaction but as a recognition. As if she saw a person where others saw a problem to be managed. He was beginning to understand something. On the 5th day she appeared. Her name, he would learn it later, was Amara. She came across the bridge every morning just after 8 o'clock. Moving quickly with the focused energy of someone who had precisely calculated how long the journey took and left exactly enough time for it. She wore simple work clothes, a skirt, a blouse, a small handbag. Her face was pretty in the way that had nothing to do with effort. Clean skin, bright eyes, a mouth that looked like it was designed for smiling but was currently pressed into concentration. She passed him on the 5th day without stopping. She passed him again on the 6th day without stopping. On the 7th day she stopped. She had been passing like everyone else, moving at her usual pace, and then something made her slow. She looked at him. Not in the quick, uncomfortable way that most people looked at beggars, the glance and look away. She actually looked, as if she was seeing a person and not a category. She opened her bag and found some money and crouched down to place it in his cup. "Good morning," she said. He had not been expecting speech. Most people who gave said nothing. "Good morning, Ma," he said. He had practiced a slightly rougher, older voice, keeping his face neutral behind the glasses. She did not immediately stand up. She stayed crouched for a moment. "Have you eaten today?" He paused. "Yes," he said. "Thank you." She stood. She looked at him for one more moment. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, "God sees you," and she walked on. He sat with those 3 words for the rest of the morning. God sees you. Not a pity statement. Not a performance of charity. Just a quiet acknowledgement that he was a human being who deserved to be seen by someone, even if that someone was only God. He had not heard anyone speak to him like that in a very long time. She came back the next day, and the day after that. Within 2 weeks, she had developed a small routine. She would pass him on her way to work each morning. She would stop. She would say good morning. Sometimes she brought something, a small packet of biscuits, a bottle of water, once a container of rice that she said she had packed extra from home. She always crouched to his level when she spoke to him so he did not have to look up. She always said his name or what she believed was his name because on the 3rd day she had simply asked, "What is your name?" He had said the first name that came to mind. Tund. Tund, she repeated as if locking it in. "I am Amara." And from that day she called him Tund every morning like she had known him for years. He began to look forward to 8 o'clock. That was a new feeling. He had not looked forward to something simply and quietly in a very long time. Not with anticipation that had nothing to do with profit or outcome or strategy. Just the plain, uncomplicated looking forward to seeing a person. He started to notice things about her in the way you notice things about someone whose presence has become important to you before you have named why. She was always slightly rushed in the morning but never harried. There was a difference. She carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had decided that whatever was happening in her life was not going to show on her face in public. But sometimes, when she thought he could not see her because of the glasses, he caught something else. A tightening around the eyes. A set to her jaw that was not concentration but endurance. Something was not right in her life. He did not ask directly. He waited, the way patience had taught him to wait, and let her show him at her own pace. It came on a Tuesday morning about 3 weeks after they first spoke. She sat down on the bridge beside him instead of crouching. Just sat down on the walkway with her bag in her lap. She was a few minutes earlier than usual, so she had time before she needed to be at work. "Tund," she said, "do you mind if I sit here a moment?" He said he did not mind. She sat quietly for a while. Below them Lagos moved and honked and burned in the morning sun. Then she said, "My boyfriend told me last night that I am too serious, that I do not know how to enjoy life, that I make him feel like he is always being judged." She said it looking straight ahead. He said nothing immediately. He had learned that she did not always need a response. Sometimes she needed someone to receive the words. He said it, she continued, right after I asked him where the rent money went. "Because the landlord came again. 3rd time this month." "Ah," he said softly. "He spends," she said, "not on us. On himself. On his friends. On things I do not even know about. And when I ask, I am the serious one. I am the one without joy." She was quiet again. "I have been with him for 2 years," she said. "And I keep thinking, maybe he will change. Maybe this is a season. But seasons have beginnings and endings, and I cannot see the ending of this one." Adebayo thought carefully before speaking. "What does your heart tell you?" he asked. She turned to look at him. He kept his face forward, his glasses on. "My heart is tired," she said simply. He nodded slowly. "A tired heart still knows the truth," he said. "It just needs to rest before it has the courage to act on it." She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she stood up, dusted her skirt, and picked up her bag. "Thank you, Tund," she said. She walked on. Over the following weeks he learned her in pieces. She worked as a senior account officer at a mid-sized firm on the island. She had grown up in Enugu and come to Lagos 6 years ago for a job opportunity that had led to this one. Her parents were still in Enugu, her father a retired teacher, her mother a seamstress. She sent money home every month without fail, which meant the money her boyfriend wasted was money that came out of more than just her comfort. She had a younger sister in university that she was partially funding. She liked pepper soup and hated traffic and had a habit of looking at strangers in the eye and smiling at them, which Lagos had not yet trained out of her despite 6 years of trying. She was 29 years old and carrying more than she showed. He learned all of this gradually, in the mornings on the bridge, in conversations that were short because she was always on her way somewhere but deep because she had the gift of saying true things quickly. And he began to feel something he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. He was careful about it. He examined it the way he examined a business proposal, from multiple angles, looking for the flaw, the hidden risk, the thing that looked good on the surface but held a problem underneath. He asked himself honestly whether he was only drawn to her because the disguise made everything feel simpler, whether the contrast between her kindness and his recent pain had made her seem more than she was. But the more he watched her, the more he was certain. She was kind when there was no audience. She was honest when honesty cost her something. She was struggling, and she had not become hard or bitter or careless with other people's feelings because of it. She saw a blind beggar on a bridge, and she crouched down to his level and said good morning. That was not performance. That was character. There was a man named Cunnel. Adebayo heard about Cunnel over several weeks in the way you hear about a storm. First as a distant rumbling that does not seem like a threat, and then gradually as something that is present in every conversation even when it is not mentioned. Cunnel was the boyfriend. From what Adebayo pieced together, Cunnel was charming in the way that could look like confidence if you did not know the difference. He worked in sales, or said he did, but his income was unreliable, which would not have been a problem if his spending were also unreliable. Instead, his spending was consistent. He spent consistently. He just spent on himself. He had a wide social circle and a loud laugh and a way of making Amara feel like her concern about practical things was a personality defect rather than a reasonable response to a real situation. One morning she came to the bridge and the tightening around her eyes was worse than Adebayo had ever seen it. He waited. He took money from my bag, she said eventually. Not a lot. I might not have noticed except I had counted it the night before because I was going to send some to my mother. She stopped. He must have taken it while I was in the bathroom. I was so sure of the amount. And then it was less. She looked at the street below. And when I mentioned it, he said I must have miscounted. That I was always looking for reasons to be unhappy. Adebayo said nothing for a moment. Then he said, Amara, what are you waiting for? She did not answer immediately. I do not know, she finally said. I think I am waiting to be sure. I do not want to make a mistake. Leaving is not a mistake, he said quietly. Staying in something that is taking from you, that can be the mistake. She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Even with the dark glasses between them, he felt the weight of it. You are very wise for someone sitting on a bridge, she said. He almost smiled. I have had time to think, he said. He had not intended to tell her. That was the truth. He had come to the bridge to observe, to learn something about the world and about himself, and he had found something he had not been looking for. He had not planned to complicate it. But life in Lagos does not always wait for your plans. It was a Friday afternoon. He had stayed on the bridge later than usual. Sometimes he came in the evenings as well, partly to think and partly out of a habit that had formed around a particular bridge and a particular hour and a particular woman who passed in the morning. She was not there in the afternoons. But the bridge felt like the right place to think. He was sitting there later than he should have been when he heard her voice. She was coming back from work, crossing the same bridge. He had not expected her. She was with a man. He could hear 2 sets of footsteps, one of them heavier than hers, and the man was talking loudly on his phone as they walked. She passed him. Then the man stopped walking. Adebayo felt the shift in the air before he understood what was happening. Is this the beggar? The man said. Not to him. To Amara. Bayo kept his head down, his white cane across his knees as always, his dark glasses forward. You sit here every morning talking to a beggar? The man's voice had a particular edge, the edge of someone who uses mockery as a form of control. This is what you do with your mornings? He is a person, Amara said. Her voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. Person. The man laughed. A blind beggar on a bridge is a person you visit. I do not visit. I greet him. There is a difference. This is embarrassing. You know that? This is embarrassing behavior for a woman. I am going, Amara said. Her footsteps moved on. After a moment, so did the man's. Adebayo sat still. He had heard everything. And so had Emeka. The earpiece was still in his ear, the line still open. He heard Emeka exhale slowly on the other end. Not speaking, just present. Just a man who had been with his employer for 6 years witnessing the moment that explained the 5 weeks of sitting on a bridge. Later that evening, driving him home, Emeka would say only one thing. She is a good woman, sir. Adebayo had looked out the window at the Lagos night. I know, he said. He sat with the knowledge of what she had done. Defended him to Connell at cost to herself without knowing he could hear it, without any audience to perform for. He sat on that bridge for a long time after they left. Then he called Emeka. It is time, he said. He did not tell her on the bridge. That did not feel right. The bridge was where he had been tunned. The blind man. What he needed to say required him to be Adebayo. He knew where she worked. She had told him herself over the weeks of morning conversations, Cornerstone Financial Services, on Akin Adesela Street on the island. She had mentioned it the way people mention the ordinary coordinates of their life to someone they have begun to trust. He had listened carefully the way he always listened, and he had remembered. He wrote her a note. Not a long one. He had thought about this carefully. The note said, My name is not Tund. My name is Adebayo Okonkwo. I owe you an explanation and an apology. I was not what I appeared to be on that bridge. But everything I said to you was real. I would like to tell you the truth in person if you will allow it. You can ignore this note completely. I will understand. But if you are willing, I would like to meet somewhere you feel safe. He included his real phone number. He had Emeka deliver it to her office with a single stem of white flower. Nothing expensive, nothing performative. Just the simplest acknowledgement that she was a person worth being honest with. Then he waited. He did not wait easily. He checked his phone more often than he would like to admit. He told himself that if she did not respond, he would accept it without pursuing further. He had put truth on the table. The choice was hers. She called on the second day. The phone rang and he looked at it. An unknown number, and something in him already knew. Hello, she said. He could hear the careful in her voice. The reasonable caution of a woman who had learned that surprises from unknown men were rarely good ones. Amara, he said. Thank you for calling. A pause. Are you really Adebayo Okonkwo? She said. Yes. Another pause. Then, the Adebayo Okonkwo. He understood what she meant by the yes, he said. She was quiet for a long moment. Why? She finally said. Just that one word. But it held everything. Because I was tired of not knowing who was real, he said. And I found out. But not in the way I expected. And certainly not with you. She did not say anything immediately. He could hear her breathing, slow and careful. Where do you want to meet? She said. He chose a small restaurant in Surulere. Not the island. Not anywhere associated with his name or his company. A place with good jollof rice and plastic chairs and the sound of a television in the corner. Neutral ground. Her territory more than his. She arrived before him and was already seated when he walked in. He was dressed simply, jeans, a plain shirt. No watch. No indicator of anything. She looked at him for a long moment. He sat down across from her. He did not have the dark glasses. He did not have the cane or the worn slippers or the cup. He just had his own face. She studied him the way you study something you thought you recognized and are not sure you still do. You were really sitting on that bridge, she said. Every morning for 5 weeks, he said. She shook her head slowly. You told me your name was Tund. She said. It was the first ordinary name that came to mind, he said. I am sorry for that. She looked at him steadily. Tund. She said it quietly, as if placing it beside Adebayo and comparing the two. Then she nodded once, accepting the explanation without letting him off too easily. Tell me everything, she said. He started at the beginning, Tola and the documents and the 3 days of sitting with what that meant and the 2 days of thinking in his penthouse and the idea that had come sideways and almost as a joke. He told her about Emeka's disapproving face. He told her about the first day and the loneliness of invisibility. He told her about the groundnut seller who prayed every morning and the delivery boy who needed 2 minutes of rest and the woman with the baby who said God bless you like she meant it. He told her about the 7th day when she stopped and crouched to his level and said good morning and he had not been expecting speech. She listened without interrupting. He noticed that about her. She had always been a good listener. She did not fill silences with her own thoughts before the other person had finished. When he finished, she sat for a moment with everything he had said. Then she said, "You heard what happened on the bridge. With Connell?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I ended it that evening," she said. "When we got home. I had been thinking about it for a long time. What you said about staying in something that takes from you. And then the way he spoke about you on that bridge. You, a stranger, someone who had nothing to do with him. And I thought, if this is how he speaks about someone he does not even know, what does that say about who he is?" Adebayo looked at her. "I am sorry it took so long," she said. "I should have done it earlier. I knew I should have. I was just afraid." "Of what?" She thought about this honestly. "Of being alone," she said. "Of starting again. Lagos is not easy, and I thought, at least with him there is someone. Even if the someone is not always good." It had not been a clean exit. Connell had not taken it quietly. There had been a difficult week of hard conversations, of arrangements to undo, of finding somewhere else to stay while things were sorted, of the particular exhaustion that comes from dismantling something that took 2 years to build even when you know dismantling it is right. But she had done it. And on the other side of it she had found something she had not expected. "Relief," she said simply. "Pure relief." He understood that. He understood it more than he would have expected to understand it. "I know what it is to have company that does not make you less alone," he said. She looked at him. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think you do." They sat in that small Surler restaurant for 3 hours. The jollof rice came and they ate and they talked about things that had nothing to do with money or business or beggars on bridges, about Enugu and Abeokuta, about their fathers, about the Lagos they had each arrived in and the one they had found, about what they wanted from the years ahead. By the time they left the restaurant, the evening had come down over the city. Outside on the street, he looked at her. "I would like to see you again," he said. "As myself this time." She smiled. And it was the smile he had suspected was designed to be there, wide and real and entirely unperformed. "As yourself," she said. "Yes, I think I would like that." The weeks that followed were not simple. Nothing real ever is. She had questions that came at irregular intervals, over the phone late at night, over food in restaurants. Once while they were walking along the waterfront on the island and she stopped suddenly and asked the one she had been holding. "How do I know this is real?" she said. "How do I know you are not performing now the way you performed on the bridge? How do I know the beggar was the test and I am not the prize?" He did not answer quickly. She had earned a real answer and real answers took time. "You do not know," he said finally. "Not yet. You learn it the way you learn anything true, slowly, over time, by watching what someone does when it costs them something." She looked at him. "And what will it cost you?" she asked. He thought about this. "Honesty," he said, "which has always been expensive for me, and patience, and the risk that you will see all of me and decide you prefer a version." She was quiet for a moment. "I have never liked versions," she said. "They are too much work to maintain." He smiled. "I know," he said. There were people who had opinions. His board members, 2 of whom heard rumors and requested a private meeting at which they expressed concern about the story reaching the press. His mother in Abeokuta, who called after she heard from a relative and spent 45 minutes telling him she had not spent 30 years praying for him to go and sit on a bridge. His friend Dare, who had known him since university, who came to his office and sat down and asked him directly, "Are you in love with this woman?" He thought about it. "Yes," he said. Dare looked at him for a long moment. "Then stop being complicated about it," Dare said. He laughed. It was the first time he had laughed freely in what felt like a very long time. There was also the matter of the press. It came out 6 weeks after their first meeting in Surler. A gossip blog that had a source who had seen him on the bridge during those 5 weeks, but had not been certain enough to act on it until the story of Adebayo and Amara began to circulate quietly in certain Lagos circles. When the two things connected, the man on the bridge and the billionaire now seen with a woman nobody had seen him with before, the source put the pieces together and sold them. The headline was the kind designed to make people click. Lagos billionaire found disguised as beggar, the shocking reason why. He did not try to manage it. He had learned that trying to manage stories in Lagos only fed them. He said nothing publicly and waited for it to pass. What surprised him was what happened instead of it passing. Something in the story touched people. The comment sections, which he did not read personally but which Emeka summarized for him with the pained expression of a man doing an unpleasant duty, were not what he expected. More people than he imagined responded not with mockery but with something closer to recognition. People who said they understood what it was to not know if someone wanted them or wanted what they had. People who said they had been on the other side of that question. People who found something in the story that belonged to their own lives. He sat with that for a while. The day he knew, truly knew, with the kind of certainty that does not require argument, was an ordinary Tuesday. Not a significant day. Not a special occasion. They were at his place on the island and she had come after work and they were eating takeaway on the couch and she had her shoes off and was arguing with him about whether the traffic on the third mainland bridge was worse in the morning or the evening, and she was wrong but arguing with complete confidence, and he was laughing and not correcting her yet because he was enjoying watching her be certain, and the ocean was dark outside the window, and Lagos was doing what Lagos does, noisy and relentless and indifferent. And in the middle of all of it he felt something he had not felt in his penthouse with its view and its emptiness. He felt at home. Not in the place. In the company. He looked at her arguing about traffic with her shoes off and her takeaway in her hand and he thought, this is what I was looking for. Not a woman who loved his money. Not a woman who performed kindness for an audience. Not a woman who came with a plan. A woman who would sit on a bridge walkway beside a blind beggar and say God sees you. A woman who would defend a stranger to a man who controlled her comfort. A woman who would ask the hard question, how do I know this is real, instead of accepting the easy answer. He looked at her. She caught him looking. What? She said. Nothing, he said. She narrowed her eyes. You do that thing where you look at someone and think very loudly. He smiled. I was thinking that you were wrong about the bridge. She pointed her fork at him. I am not wrong about the bridge. You are completely wrong about the bridge. She smiled. And there it was again, that smile. He reached over and took her hand. She looked at their hands and then at him. He said, I would like to stop looking and start staying. If you will have me. She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car horn sounded somewhere on the island and Lagos answered it with 3 more. Then she said, I already told Kunnel to leave because of advice from a blind beggar on a bridge. I think I can manage a billionaire who knows how to sit quietly and listen. He laughed. She laughed. And in a penthouse above the city where he had been so completely alone, something that had been very quiet for a very long time became loud and warm and real. They did not have a simple story to tell people at dinner parties. Other couples had met at work or through friends or at events or on dating apps. Adebayo and Amara had met on a pedestrian bridge in Surulere when he was pretending to be blind, and she had stopped to say good morning to someone she thought could not see her clearly. But the story, complicated as it was true. Every part of it. And they had both learned, him through one kind of emptiness and her through another, that a true story, however strange, was worth more than a comfortable one. He went back to the bridge one more time. Not in disguise. As himself. In his regular clothes, in the morning, on a day when the sun was already doing what the Lagos sun does. Arriving early and immediately serious. The groundnut seller was there at the bottom of the stairs, arranging her wares for the day. She looked up when he approached. He bought groundnuts. He paid more than they cost without making it obvious. She looked at him with the bright, careful eyes of a woman who had spent years reading people. You look like somebody I have seen here before, she said. He smiled. I used to come here sometimes, he said. To think. She nodded slowly. She handed him the groundnuts. Thinking is good, she said. Not enough people do it before they act. He thanked her and walked up the stairs to the bridge. He stood where he had sat for 5 weeks. He looked at the spot on the walkway. He thought about a woman who had crouched to his level and said good morning to someone she believed could not see her properly. He thought about what it had taken to find her. The strange road of it. The things you had to lose and the things you had to sit with in silence before you could find the thing that was real. Then he went back down the stairs and got into his car and went to pick up Amara for breakfast. She was waiting outside her building when he arrived. She got in and looked at him with the expression she had, half reading him, half amused by what she found. "You went to the bridge," she said. He looked at her. "How did you know?" "You have that face," she said. "The one you get when you have been thinking about something true." He pulled out into traffic. "I was thinking about a woman who stopped for a blind beggar," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said he was not really blind. "No," he said. But she stopped anyway. She reached over and put her hand on his arm. They drove into the Lagos morning, the city doing what it always did, loud and relentless and lit up by a sun that had no interest in being subtle, and two people in a car finding their way through it the only way anyone ever really does. Together. They say love finds you when you stop looking. That is not completely true either. Love does not find you. You find it. But you find it only when you have first found yourself, who you are without the money, without the title, without the car and the penthouse and the name that makes people adjust their behavior before you even speak. Adebayo Okonkwo had everything Lagos could offer a man. And he gave it all up for 5 weeks to sit on a bridge and find out what was real. What he found was not what he expected. He found loneliness first. Then he found the ordinary people who filled that loneliness with small honest acts. The woman who prayed, the boy who rested, the voice that said God sees you. And he found Amara. Not because she was looking for a billionaire. Not because she knew who he was. But because she was the kind of person who looked at a blind beggar on a bridge and saw a man who deserved a good morning. That is the thing about true character. It does not change based on the audience. It does not perform when important people are watching and disappear when they are not. It is simply there in the ordinary moments, in the small choices, in the way you treat someone who cannot do anything for you. Amara had that. And Adebayo, sitting behind dark glasses on a pedestrian bridge in Surulere, had been watching. And in the end, the unexpected thing that happened, the thing the title promises you, was not the revelation of who he was. It was the discovery of who she was. And the quiet, enormous, life-changing miracle of being truly seen by someone who did not yet know you were worth seeing. That is the story of the billionaire who pretended to be blind. And to everyone watching who has wondered whether anyone will ever love them for who they are and not for what they have, whether that is money or status or usefulness or the role you play in someone's plan, hear this. The right person will see you on an ordinary bridge on an ordinary morning and say good morning like you matter. Because you do. Drop a comment if this story touched something in you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. This has been Folktales with Charlie. I will see you in the next story.